listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you live and around the world from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide, toll-free, 800-610-7035. Email xzone at xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X-Zone Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, live and around the world, right from our main radio website at www.xzoneradiotv.com. And I'd like to say hello to all our listeners in Belgium who are listening to us on Radio X, Belgium's English-speaking radio station. My guest this hour is going to be talking to me about the Zika virus. Now, you may have heard about the Zika virus on the media, but the Zika virus is a disease caused by Zika virus that is spread to people primarily through the bite of an infected species of mosquito. The most common symptoms of Zika are fever, rash, joint pain, and red eye. The illness is usually mild with symptoms lasting for several days to a week. Now, about 1 in 5 people infected with Zika will get sick. For people who get sick, the illness is usually mild. For this reason, many people might not even realize that they have been infected. The most common symptoms of Zika virus disease are fever, rash, joint pain, red eye, as I said before. Symptoms typically begin 2 to 7 days after being bitten by the infected mosquito. Now, who is at risk? Well, anyone who is living or in or traveling to areas where the Zika virus is found who has not been already infected with the virus is at risk of infection, including pregnant women. Some of the places in the Americas where the Zika virus is presently: Barbados, Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Costa Rica, Curacao, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, French Guiana, Guadeloupe, Guatemala, Guyana, Haiti, Honduras, Martinique, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Paraguay, St. Martin, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Venezuela, and, you know, this sounds like the stamps that I have in my passport. But it's not. This is a serious topic. Joining me now is Dr. Doug Rocky. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Physics at Western Illinois University, followed by his Master of Science and PhD in Physics and Technology Education at the University of Illinois. His military career has spanned 4 decades to include combat duty during the Vietnam War and Gulf War I. Doug served as a member of the 3rd U.S. Army Medical Command's Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Teaching, Medical Response, and Special Operations Team, the 3rd U.S. Army Captured Equipment Project Team, and with the 3rd U.S. Army Depleted Uranium Assessment Team during Gulf War I, Operation Desert Storm. He was the U.S. Army's Depleted Uranium Project Director from 1994 to 1995. He developed the congressionally mandated education and training materials and wrote U.S. Army Regulation 700-48, the U.S. Army PAM 700-48, and the U.S. Army's Common Task for DU Incidents. Doug has taught nuclear, biological, chemical warfare, hazardous materials, and emergency medicine for over 20 years to both civilian and military personnel. Joining me now is my good friend Doug Rocky. And Doug, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Rob, and good evening.
Doug, what is the real story behind the Zika virus? Now, I find it very hard to believe that something like this is very systematically infecting people. Is there another side to this story that the media and the powers to be do not want to get out?
Well, we've had a study group that's been involved in this, and I know you've been lucky enough to get involved in a study group, which got us onto this topic tonight. But everybody's looking at, okay, what's happening? We know that we've been doing GMO work. We've been modifying everything. We're modifying mosquitoes and trying to change the mosquitoes in order to control all the other endemic diseases, all the flaviviruses that are affecting everything. And then we start looking and then going, whoa, wait a minute. How come all this stuff has jumped from Uganda all over the world? And how come we're seeing all this stuff? We're seeing rapid acquisition.
Yep.
We're starting to see all kinds of weird diseases and weird physiological effects in everybody that are symptomatic of thing happen more than one. It's kind of like what some of them in our study group call gain of function. In other words, we're seeing these things function in a different way than what they originally were thought to be doing. And again, whenever we look at biological warfare stuff, and this is what gets really scary, anytime we have any of this stuff, we're going to start seeing genetic modifications. So in other words, how it functions, what it responds to, who it affects, how it can be transmitted, changes. And then when you start messing with the mosquitoes like absolutely been doing, I mean, you have to understand they're definitely doing it, messing with mosquitoes. And how do we genetically modify the mosquitoes in order to make them less susceptible to handle one disease, which in turn may turn it around to where, oh my God, we're getting our butts kicked.
So Doug, I was asked a question today by my wife, who, by the way, said to say hello to you. She has a lot of respect for you, and she remembers well the Christmas shows we used to do together. She wanted me to ask you, Doug, is it possible that this is a new form of bioterrorism?
Yeah. That's the frightening part about it. That was kind of like the last question that I asked on our study group, right, as I'm getting ready for this, and we were trying to communicate that information back and forth. Yeah, it could be, because all of a sudden we're seeing all these endemic diseases that started in one area, and all of a sudden they're transmitted to another area. Mm-hmm. We're seeing really strange responses as far as how everybody's affected. Now, the other thing that really is weird and kind of got all our radar went all up and our hair stood up on our neck is, like within 12 hours of all this stuff coming out real warned, all of a sudden there's posters being put up all over creation. There's warnings going out to everything. It's on all over the evening news. And they had to know that all this stuff was coming about and happening to put all this stuff together. It's sort of like all the information I've shared with you. Mm-hmm. When I went onto the medical resource sites to find it, the information was staggering. And it was just like, wow, it's all there. It's all been known. All the warnings have been out there. Now what are we going to do? So when it gets really frightening is all of a sudden we have a disease entity being transmitted by mosquitoes. We know the mosquitoes and the modification of the mosquitoes and other genetic modification of the mosquitoes, so the mosquitoes are different than the other ones. Can they be more susceptible to handle this stuff or transmit the disease? And then the question comes up because, hey, this isn't just a mosquito bite biting somebody. I mean, this is a blood-borne illness. Mm-hmm. How can this also be transmitted? Well, anytime I start thinking blood-borne illness, and I got to go back to the real scary part as an old EMT and a combat medic, when we went to war and we were doing this stuff or working on an ambulance, we're awash in blood. There are no standard universal precautions that are going to protect you. That is a horrendous fallacy. You can't do it because we could wear all the protective clothing, and you've seen this, Rob, and you've seen the documents and everything, and we wore it, you've seen the videos and everything, hey, and it didn't protect us. So it becomes very, very scary on what is happening. Have we been modifying the mosquitoes? And again, the same thing, we can modify the mosquitoes through our direct scientific involvement, which is definitely happening. But the other thing that gets even more and more frightening, we got a total misuse of pesticides in every place. I mean, beyond comprehension. And so as you start applying these pesticides to these mosquitoes and trying to kill them, it's sort of like a little dab will do you. Well, a little dab that did it didn't do it. And now they've modified themselves to where they're now immune to the pesticide, or they've modified how they respond to it. And now the control of it becomes almost a nightmare.
So these are really
go with stuff.
So these are really superbugs.
That's my understanding, and what our study group is beginning to understand. Yeah, we're looking at superbugs. You know, it all goes back to the same thing. I mean, we've talked about it. It's been on your program. We've shared all the documents with people all over the world. We know before Operation Desert Storm, Iraq had the chemical and biological weapons.
Yes.
They were shipped to them by the U.S. Army in the same group that's got the Zika virus. I mean, it was really strange, and you've got it there, and you can put it up for your websites. You can go buy Zika virus on the Internet right now.
Unbelievable.
So, hey, you want to buy some? There you go. And then you start spreading it around. God knows where it's going to happen and how it's going to get in everybody.
Well, aren't we?
And also, you've got the individual is exposed, and what are we going to do next?
Aren't we just feeding terrorist groups with all this knowledge?
Yeah. I mean, that's why it's really controlled. When we were teaching the medical management chemical biological casualties course for the military, we controlled who went into it. And when we started teaching it for the law enforcement, we controlled who went into it. I mean, you know, the first class I had when we taught the chemical and biological management course was the New York Police and Fire Department Emergency Services Unit. And even then, they had a very restricted number of individuals that they allowed to come to the original course at Fort McClellan, Alabama.
So the part that intrigues me, Doug, is that it seems to have started in Brazil. In Brazil, you've got the Amazon jungle.
Well, it started in Uganda back in the 40s, and now all of a sudden it showed up in Brazil, and it showed up all over South America. It showed up in Central America. It showed up in the Caribbean islands. Now, you have to understand, I mean, we're smack dab in the high season for everybody to go to the Caribbean islands, enjoy and have a good time.
Unless you go to Cuba, don't go to Cuba. It sucks. We went there a couple of months ago. We went. We had Red Tag do the booking. We went down by Sunwing. We called it a week in hell in Varadero. So stay away from Cuba. All right, I've got that off my chest. Let's go.
Yeah, but these other countries where we've got it, I mean, I've been to Puerto Rico and all these other, you listed all those nations. I mean, Saint Martinique, the Virgin Islands, these are prime tourist designations. And you're going to go in there, and now we got to come into precautions. I mean, you know, as we looked at the precautions, you can pull them up on the web. I mean, and don't go to, you know, some kind of weird thing. Go to the WHO, or CDC and read their stuff. You still got to take it with a grain of salt, but it's going to be pretty sound. And so they got all these precautions you want to take. So you're going to go down there, and you're going to wear all the loose clothing, and you're going to wear the white light clothing and everything, and else you're going to use pesticides. Well, you know, we got 400,000 from Operation Desert Storm that are all sick today, and 100,000 or more are dead because of the misuse of pesticides and the misuse of all of these various things that they were talking about to control it. And these were extraordinarily healthy individuals. So now you're going to have individuals of all different ages. You've got pregnant women or women that are going to get pregnant while they're on these vacations. You've got elderly going down there, so they got all these medical problems to begin with. And now we're going to zap them with something that's looking like a gain of function. I mean, Guillain-Barré is also a probability of this. They're finding this is happening. I mean, when I dug into it, I found out, hey, it's not just being transmitted by mosquitoes. It's being transmitted by sexual intercourse. It's a bloodborne, can be transmitted by a cut or a wound where the person's infected and you get that blood into you. You get the fluids transmitting back and forth. I don't know if anybody's done it, but I sure have a question. Can it be transported by other bodily fluids that we exchange? Because if this disease is bloodborne and the blood is carried in the body, it goes all over the body, and there ain't no simple area that's immune from it.
You know, when we look at the past, Doug, we have AIDS, the avian viruses, the avian flu. We've got Hep C. It seems that these these different type of problems that we encounter come at a very sporadic, yet what seems to be measured time.
Yeah, and then the thing that comes on down, and as I look through this stuff, they're talking about they don't know a whole lot of way it's happening, okay, or what's going on. But their whole idea and everything that WHO has put out has been on TV. It's all over. That their number one thing is they want to control mosquitoes, okay?
Sure.
That's great. So what I'm going to do is go out there and spray pesticides all over. You know, hey, here comes your pesticide man into your living room or your kitchen. He sprayed it all over creation. Now you're going to transmit it into your food. Now you're going to get it in there. Or you're going to have it on your skin, and you're going to transmit it on your skin, because they're absolutely telling everybody to apply DEET. The other thing they're telling everybody, and this is right in the doctrine, is to use spray your clothes with permethrin. Well, you know, we did that in Desert Storm, and it nailed hundreds of thousands, and it's got, you know, over 1 million now from Operation Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom, and everybody in these nations are sick. So we knew we had a significant nerve agent pesticide problem, total misuse. We gave all of these drugs and medications that are supposed to protect you but kicked your butt.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started spraying each other with all these pesticides. So in here it says, well, if you got a child, apply the pesticide onto your hand and then wipe it on their face or anything. Well, I ain't never seen a child that doesn't want to lick their face. And I think most people I found forget to wash their hands afterwards, so they're going to go do doodle-diddle or whatever they're going to do, and then they're going to lick the fingers. Well, now they got pesticides. And a little dab will do you. It doesn't take much. And what we're seeing is synergistic function. In other words, the protective measure, when combined with other protective measures, in of themselves may be innocuous and not cause a problem, but when you get 1 + 1 + 1, it ain't 3. It's 39, and now all of a sudden you got all these people sick. And that's where we're seeing this whole mess, and what I call the better living through chemistry. In other words, we've adapted, we've adjusted, we've exposed ourselves so many chemicals and compounds, biologicals, inorganic, organic compounds, that we don't know what the interaction function of this stuff is. And now we got people getting sick and going down, and we have no treatment for them.
So how
Am
do
I
we...
scaring you?
No. I love going down to the Caribbean, Doug. We've been going down for years and years. My parents had a place in Freeport, and I know how many people go down there on the cruises, to the different resorts. It is scary, Doug. Are we looking at a worldwide pandemic?
Well, that's pretty much what the World Health Organization put out at about 6 o'clock tonight, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock tonight. That came out on the Internet. It came out on the evening news saying, yeah, we're looking at a worldwide epidemic or crisis. Because as you see people going in, they go back. Now they get sick and they go back to where they are.
Right.
Now we got cross-transmission, and we don't know how it's done. Okay, we know it's a blood-borne disease. We know we have an incubation time. So the person's hot and dirty. They go back. They don't know they're sick. They expose the next person, and then it just starts moving all the way around. Then they get bit by another bug that didn't carry it, that now is carrying it. And then what are we going to do? I mean, it says in here, it comes back to the stuff. It says in order to control this, we need to apply pesticides. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason you got 400,000 sick from Operation Desert Storm of the U.S. military alone, and tens of thousands in Canada, and some of my best friends in Canada died. You've worked with them, Rob.
Sure have, yeah.
And now we're spreading it all over the place. I mean, wake up the world. I mean, we can't continue to do it. And then if they start spraying the pesticides and they don't use enough, and that mosquito just modifies and goes, whoa, I like this stuff now. Boy, this is like going to the candy store. Now it's coming back and really getting it, and now it's spreading even farther and farther. And then we see all the genetic modification as a disease. And these viral diseases, there are no such things. With viruses, there is no medication to give it. Bacteriologically, we use antibiotics, but we know today the bacteria have all modified where the antibiotics aren't even working. And with these endemic viral diseases, God Almighty knows how they're going to modify and everything else if we start playing with them. And then we start modifying, again, the mosquitoes. In other words, trying to kill off the mosquitoes or modify them such that they don't carry one disease. Mm-hmm. But now all of a sudden they're carrying a whole host of them in a different way to where we can't get rid of them. Now what do we do?
Let me ask you a question, Doug. I've looked at the map of where the Zika virus is and where it's not. Now, there's a lot of friction presently that is growing between certain countries. For example, what is happening with China and the United States. The Chinese economy is going, if you'll excuse the expression, tits up. We've got the Chinese strengthening its military, the islands that they're creating, the naval force they're creating. Is it possible that a country or countries who are not friendly towards the Americas could actually have created the Zika virus in order to cause chaos?
Or did we create it in order to cause chaos and get control? I mean, look at Colombia and Venezuela and those nations down there. I mean, hello. They're not exactly friendly with us, and we'd love to get control. We'd like to get rid of the drug lords and everything else.
But
and then all the other stuff, too. But then the other thing, too, just on if everybody's friendly with each other. I mean, the indications, the reason this got from Uganda to begin with is because of trade. So we're start trading, and we're moving products around. We're moving tires or old furniture or junk around all over. And this thing is, hitching a ride on it. And so it's going over there just as hunky-dory because, that's great. I mean, hey, I need something from here. Well, I'm going to take that product over there. Well, that product's never been there. There's no bugs there before.
All right, Doug, you and I have to take our news break at the bottom.
Slaughter of all of Americans when Columbus came here.
Doug, stand by. We've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation Dr. Major Doug Rocky is my very special guest this hour. He's a great man. He is a true crusader. It's always a great pleasure and honor having you on the show, Doug. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
But the idea that you got the people-powered model, remember, no big donors, no super PAC, the people-powered model going all the way to the finish line.
So you think this would be a strong second for Bernie Sanders? And
48% would be strong for anybody in any circumstance. But when you're talking about someone like Bernie Sanders, who was a joke 3 months ago, with no big money and no super PAC, this is the vindication not just of him, but of the model.
Paul Begala,
you can do it without
you're
big
obviously
money.
a Clinton supporter. Do you believe that?
I am. Well, the Bill Bradley model is certainly not what Bernie Sanders wants. Bill Bradley lost every single primary and every single caucus. Sure. He was 0 for life. So that's not what Bernie is hoping to do. You have to win this. It's essentially a two-person race. God bless Martin O'Malley. Most precincts we're hearing he's not even going to be viable. So in a two-person race, it's close but no cigar. This thing will go on. He's going to, we'll go to New Hampshire, and that'll be next. But tonight, if Hillary can't survive, the thing I want to quibble with was there's no rebellion. Van's talking about there's a rebellion, there's a youth rebellion. There's a massive rebellion on the Republican side. Jake just pointed it out. 57% of Republican caucus attendees want to stick a thumb in the eye of their establishment. 56% of Democrats in the entrance polls say they want to continue the policies of President Obama.
If you had Carson in at 67%.
Well, that's a good point.
But let's not.
Who's very anti-establishment, though.
But let me say
There's
this.
two different parties running
Numbers,
different races.
We're still early. This is what these numbers say to me. If Elizabeth Warren had gotten into this fight, you are talking about Hillary Clinton essentially possibly ending up like a Jeb Bush. I just think we have to be clear that there is a huge discontent within this party, and the establishment doesn't want to deal with it. They keep poo-pooing it. If Bernie Sanders can get this close, I think it's important for the Clintons to say there's pain in this party.
By the way, 57% of the vote on the Democratic side now and 51% for Clinton.
But the map gets very tricky for Bernie after this.
Well,
Look, New Hampshire is probably going to be great for him. But to Paul's point, Iowa was where he really needed a decisive win to make the case that he's not just a regional candidate, that he's not just a Vermont candidate. After New Hampshire, it's going to get very tricky.
Certainly,
when
South
Matt
Carolina,
diversifies.
very strong for Hillary Clinton with African American support.
Yeah, Bernie has yet to show that he can make inroads with minority voters, and I think. I like Elizabeth Warren. I think you're being a little unfair to Bernie because he's run a very strong campaign and he's been a very compelling candidate. But Paul's right. When you look at the numbers, Democrats, Barack Obama has a 91% approval rating with these Iowa Democrats. They're not looking to storm the Bastille here. They're looking to protect the progressive gains that were made and build on them. At least many of them are looking for that. And that's a more advantageous environment in the long run for Hillary Clinton.
If it ends up being a 2 or a 3-point race, I think it's a legitimate question to ask, should he have said something more strenuous about the emails? He would not have had to go full negative, but he could have said something Friday night when the news broke that he's increasingly troubled about this predicament, and he wonders where it's all leading.
I don't think that would have helped him. I don't think it would have helped him because Democratic voters like Hillary Clinton an awful lot.
So this is the debate I'm constantly having with David Axelrod, my friend here. If Bernie Sanders really wants to win, I believe he has to take on Hillary Clinton frontally. That could be emails. That could be a million things that he has decided not to touch.
Let me just tell you.
What I say is that a candidate who has an 80% approval rating is hard to attack. So let me
just give you new numbers on the Republican side. We've gotten in 37% of the vote in now. Ted Cruz has 29%, Donald Trump 26%, Marco Rubio with 20%, and then Ben Carson with 10%. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
What I was going to say is I want to posit a different theory, which is, in a way, Hillary Clinton is the victim of her own presumption because this is a no-cost vote in the minds of many voters. They can vote for Bernie Sanders. I have a friend who sent me an email.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here in the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. The X Zone is a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. The X Zone radio show is broadcast live from our Hamilton, Ontario Broadcast Centre, Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. until midnight Eastern, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network and on our worldwide family of radio broadcast and satellite programming affiliates. UFOs, aliens, ghosts, hauntings, Bigfoot, lake monsters, unsolved mysteries, conspiracies, cover-ups, and much more. So plan to join me, Rob McConnell, right here in the X Zone on the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, or listen to the X Zone radio show archives 24/7, 365, and the live broadcast at www.xzoneradiotv.com. You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
Welcome back, everyone. As you notice, when we take our break, we go directly to the news feed. Let me see here right now in Iowa, the Iowa Republican caucuses. Senator Ted Cruz is leading with 29%, followed by Donald Trump at 26%. Senator Marco Rubio, the figures just changed. Marco Rubio is now at 20%, and Dr. Ben Carson is at 10%. When it comes to the the Democratic caucuses, Secretary Clinton is leading with 51%, and Senator Saunders has 48%. Governor O'Malley, 1%. Interesting race. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. And Doug, as somebody who lives in the States, what do you think about what's going on in both the Democratic and Republican Party? Oops, I'm sorry, Doug, we've got you there.
Sanders for years and years and years. God bless him. He is probably one of the few congressmen and senators that actually takes care of veterans in any of our nations. He's been a leader in that forever and ever and ever. Hillary Clinton, on the other end, was definitely instrumental in getting all the nonsense started to stop us all. And then when we get to the Republican thing, well, I mean, Donald Trump has been responsive right now to us and listening and thinking. The other ones haven't been responsive at all.
What was your?
I don't know. It's really scary because we had all, and we talked about it. We had all the hopes and dreams because we worked with President Barack Obama when he was, here in state government in Illinois, and then we worked with him when he was running. And we had hopes and dreams it would all turn around and help everybody. Well, it didn't.
But when was it last week? Donald Trump, instead of going to the Fox debate, organized his own rally in which he raised nearly $6 million for veterans. What was your take on that? Being a veteran yourself, did you find that this was something that was welcomed by the American veterans, or did many of the veterans look at this and say it's just a publicity stunt, a PR thing?
Well, I don't know. He sent me a personal invitation.
Wow.
But it was, 300 miles to get up there. I couldn't get there. But I mean, anything they can do, anything. Right now, the awareness is what's happening is a nightmare. The medical care is doing. I mean, you've seen the documents. One of my best friends, team members, got denied care last Thursday, and we yanked and screamed. And I talked to him a few minutes ago, and they finally offered him care again today, saying definitive care. But it's not happening in any place. And so we're looking at the same thing. I mean, we have to come down to we're looking at biological warfare, chemical warfare materials, whether it's endemic disease or it's man-made disease, or we're looking at genetic modification on superbugs and all the other stuff. We're looking at transmission. So during the break, I was thinking I'm looking to control of communicable diseases in man, looking at the chapter on this. It's been in there forever and ever and ever. And the number of diseases listed along with the Zika virus is scary. And all of these are blood-borne diseases, so I'm going, wait, I've got a mosquito right now. Hey, wait a minute, a tick can bear it. Oh, yeah, hey, well, then a flea could bear it, and a bed bug could bear it. And then we got transmission from person to person via blood-borne, just like is happening. Mm-hmm. And then say you got all these people using drugs and immunizations. You can go to the doctor, and they're transmitted via needles or whatever you have for a cut. Right. And all of a sudden, we have a totally uncontrollable mess. And the prophylaxis, or a way to protect it, what we have learned now is a way to kick everybody's butt. So to me, it just becomes a totally frightening thing because everybody's traveling all over the place. Everybody's carrying everything all over the place. We no longer have control of what is taken from one location to another. We have no control of the bugs or the bacteria or anything that are transmitted or hauled from one nation to another or one area to another. And I thought we would have learned what had happened when the Americas were discovered and Columbus came over here, and all of the incredible plagues that ridded this whole area of the Native Americans. We would have learned, and we didn't.
Doug, you said something before about your friend who was a veteran who was denied care and help. How can someone who is a veteran who has done their tour of duty as a volunteer, or even those who were drafted during the Vietnam War, how could the government deny them treatment?
They just simply do what they're doing for me right now. Again, they're denying that our team even actually went to Iraq, that we did all the chem bio, that we did the DU, we did Bowers Raiders with everything else. They're just denying it. Then the other thing, what we see across the nation, and it's in the U.S. and Canada and every place, is they deny any correlation between the exposures and the health effects until it kicks them in the butt. Even though the internal documents prove everything, their own internal documents that they don't even share then when you ask them to. I mean, we're looking at a nightmare here. So, I mean, we got genetically modified. We're modifying mosquitoes. We got disease organisms for which we have no treatment. We have no control on people or items moving from location to location. So the bugs and mosquito are going to transmit it all over the place, and then we have no way to clean it up. And the prophylaxis we have is to spray everybody with pesticides. At the same time, they're getting zapped by better living through chemistry. Oh, it scares me. It's frightening because I have to live with the physiological effects. And, day in and day out, people call for help and they need to live with it, and then you can't get them care because people don't want to acknowledge or admit that we messed up. I don't care if we messed up. It doesn't matter what we did in the past. It's what we're going to do in the future.
I find it very hard to understand, Doug, that I know for a fact you were over there. I'm not the government. So how in the name of God can the government deny the fact that you were there? Your name is well recorded as you being there, and I'm sure the rest of the military are recorded there as well. How, why is the government doing this to you?
It's simple harassment to make your life miserable. I mean, that's why Paul Lyons committed suicide. He was my host of my radio show, Warrior Connection, on the Progressive Radio Network under Gary Knoll, and he was the guy that blew the whistle on Camisea. Well, they harassed him. He was sick. His kids were sick. He couldn't get the care. They said, well, you don't need the care. You weren't there. You didn't do it. And they just make all their lives so miserable that what they want you to do is quit and go away so they don't have any economic costs and they don't have to acknowledge the incredible health effects of the better living through chemistry and all the chemical biological exposures and now all the endemic diseases. So what we're seeing today is frightening because where's it going to end up next and who's it going to be affecting next? So that nice couple went down on vacation down there and they're having a good time, young and everything, a whole life ahead of them. She gets pregnant on the vacation, gets bitten by a mosquito, and now all these horrible, horrible birth defects show up. But what do they do in the future?
All right, let me ask you this, Doug. You know that movie that was on years ago, Erin Brockovich? Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She was a whistleblower. They made a movie of her, and they basically turned her into a hero for what she did and the people that she was able to help. I find it very sad that for the men and women who have gone to protect the United States of America, who were willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice, as well as the Canadians and as well as every other country, that the government that they went to protect is the government that is denying them the care that they so rightfully deserve. That is despicable.
Well, that's what happened to Captain Terry Reardon. I mean, you know that.
Yeah.
Terry, I mean, you couldn't ask for anything worse. His autopsy proved everything, but they denied everything. And we still have members of my team where the individuals died and the spouses still can't get any compensation because they're denying that their husband, the Colonel Bill Orell, was even there. But yet the photographs show him being right there.
Why doesn't the media take this and run with it? Why don't the people who are running for the presidential office take this and run with it? I don't understand why this isn't being plastered all over the news.
Yeah, I'm at a loss because, they're giving up. And, and one after another have given up because they can't get care, they can't get proper care, they can't get proper answers, or they're told to use and this same thing what we're looking at here, okay, spray pesticide all over yourself. Wait a minute. That's going to make me sick.
Yeah.
And if I'm already susceptible with other diseases, I'm going to have a nightmare because diseases are synergistic. They're not additive. When you get zapped by one, the consequences of the other are horrific. And so now we're seeing it. We're talking about economics, so we're talking about incredible economic losses. I mean, what I would say right now is until we get a handle on this and we put it all out trying to get it done in our study group, you ban travel to and from this area, period, end of story, until such time they get it under control.
Yeah, but you and I
can't take a possibility of sending somebody in there, get sick, come back, and transmit it here.
But you know, Doug, that'll never happen because there's too much money at risk. People are expendable. We've seen this throughout history. And it seems now in today's society we're more expendable than we ever were before. We live in a disposable society. Everything is replaceable. I remember speaking to a politician once, and he said, Rob, do you know what it is? I said, what's that? He said, it's very simple. If that person doesn't want to do it, you just put your finger in the glass, and there's more in the place to take it. Like, nobody is, how should I best put this? We just don't matter anymore.
Yeah, well, we got to go back to God, don't we?
Listen, I was one of the first people to get on an orange crate when Bibles were taken out of the schools, when the Lord's Prayer was taken out of the school. I was one of the first people to really get pissed off when we realized that we were going to be turned into a too politically correct society. People don't want to listen, Doug.
Yeah, and the schools are collapsing because you can't have anything done. I've been as a teacher and taught all from kindergarten through graduate school. You don't have adequate time to teach in the classroom because you got disruptive kids, you got people that don't do their homework, the parents don't support it, they don't try, they don't exert any effort, and then the whole bunch that really do care are all disrupted because of the other ones. And what's really frightening is the ones that are disrupting are 100% capable of excelling if they make the conscious social and cultural choice to do it. So now we're seeing the same thing all over. These social and cultural choices, the economic choices, have got everybody in fear now of another endemic disease that's running rampant with horrific consequences when we could probably stop it real fast if we decided to. But the economics are going to go, wait a minute, I can't tell people don't go down there on vacation right now.
If you were president of the United States, Doug, and I love asking you these questions because you give me honest answers, and this is what listeners deserve, what would you do? What would be your first order of business?
Well, I'd set up a moratorium, send the medical people down there to isolate the areas where the disease is, get control of the disease and eradicate it. And once it's eradicated, then you can open back up. But as long as we have open, porous borders and open and porous travel and transfer of everything else, we can't control any diseases. And then we have to come doing to the understanding that we're doing all these genetic modifications. How does the disease respond to the medications we have, and do the people use the medications as appropriately designed? That's the reason we got into a nightmare with all of the stuff bacteriological. They started giving the antibiotics and not missing them properly, and now they're all immune to the antibiotics we have. So again, it's all come back to common sense. In the military, it's simple. You acknowledge the disease, provide care for it, provide total documentation to everybody. I mean, I can't even get the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs physicians' guidelines on Gulf War illness handed out to the physicians at the Danville VA or any else, or handed out to individuals that are sick unless we give it to them. We got congressional people that are, helping us and getting distributed, but it's only a handful, one by one.
What about the new candidates that are out there? Like if Donald Trump was willing to put $6 million, get $6 million for the veterans, and I applaud him for that. I applaud Donald Trump for many reasons. What would it hurt, Doug, if you and other members of the armed forces and the veterans sent him a letter and let him know exactly what was going on? Would there be anything to lose?
I did, and that's why he responded back. Hey, good going, Doug. Hey, you want to come to the meeting?
Yeah.
So he's aware now if he's reading everything, because they are acknowledging that they're receiving it. But you have to come down. Money isn't the problem. The whole thing is attitudes and acknowledgement. We have a problem that requires a direct action, and we have to figure out what we're going to do, and we're going to do it, and we're going to admit it, and we're going to go forward. And that's where the thing is. There's no conscious decision to solve the problem. Everybody talking about, well, we'll try this and we'll do that. Well, I didn't think about this. And instead of, okay, dig in and do it. It doesn't mean we're going to be successful, but we'll be a lot better off than where we're at right now. I mean, we can't let this disease spread around the world. We can't let it affect more unborn children. We can't have other diseases being built up on gain of function and being spread all over.
Is it possible that the Zika virus is a man-made birth control?
Oh, boy, you asked $1 million question. I don't have the answer to that. I think that's up for everybody to understand and try and figure out themselves. We know so many of these diseases now were created or they were let loose. I mean, West Nile virus was, came from Plum Island. That was one of the back things that was sent over to Iraq, and that release got into the park there, New York City's park, and then it marched across North America, didn't it?
Wasn't there also talk about AIDS being created as a controlling agent for a race control agent?
I know I've heard those stories, but I have no knowledge or anything thereof.
Yeah. What can John Q. Public do, Doug?
Well, they've got to yell and scream, but again, most of the public doesn't want to know. Most of the public doesn't want to be involved. Because if you have to be involved, you have to make a decision, you have to hold somebody accountable, you have to ask somebody to take an action, and then you have to deal with the repercussions that come down on you. I mean, it's a common thing. I'll go around and say, hey, Doug, are you in trouble again? It's like, well, the only time I get in trouble is when I try to help people, and the other people that are never in trouble are never trying to help somebody.
Yeah, but if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Most of the people would just as soon just ignore the whole thing rather than having to be either one.
I guess it's easier to be an ostrich and put your head in the sand and put your butt in the air than it is to do like you and the members of that forum that you're on who try to come up with solutions. And, man, you're a fighter, Doug. Ever since I've known you, you have been there fighting, mostly for others.
Yeah, but at the same time, we've had a lot of fun teaching kids and doing music and doing theater, haven't we?
Oh, we sure have. We sure have.
That shows you the future because those kids and everything, by the way, those kids, that young girl that you did there has gone on now to be a professional actress.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? We used to love doing that, Doug, and if ever you get into the Christmas spirit again and you do Miracle on 34th Street, I would love to do it again. Anytime, Dougie.
Yeah, we're talking about Resurrect in 1787 this fall. We had that world premiere here at the famed Virginia Theater, and it was all about the American Constitution, how it was developed, and they're talking about resurrecting it in the fall. So maybe we can do something there. That'll be held at the old Homer Opera House that they've now resurrected that was built around 1900.
Wow. Well, if you do it, Doug, and if your sound man can send us a feed, we would be honored to carry the whole show.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Right now, what we got to do is get the message out to how do we solve these problems. And we've got to have, sit down and isolate the area, secure the stuff, get rid of the disease, control transportation and movement, and transportation of goods and products and movement of people, and then hopefully do the research. I don't think we're going to find a cure for this stuff. I mean, the doctors have said over and over on these chemical and biological, there ain't no cure. And therefore, people have to live with it, and therefore we have to prevent the exposure.
And
that's what we tried to do with the U.S. Center for Disease Control Conference in 1999, and, well, that all failed.
What authority would FEMA have in all of this?
When it turns into a disaster, they got to pick up the pieces.
But because it's being classified as an epidemic, couldn't FEMA step in and use its vast powers to actually say no more travel to these countries?
Well, I think somebody needs to make that decision because, we made that recommendation to the University of Illinois here, our group did. We haven't heard back, but, you have to use some common sense. But the other thing, too, is do you have to have the government tell you what to do or not to do? If you have a problem and you have a possibility of going down there, they're going to get pregnant, they're going to get bit and get sick. Mm-hmm. You yourself have to have some common sense and go, oh, I ain't going.
Common sense is a rare commodity these days, old friend.
I guess it is, isn't it?
And it's the same people who will expect the government to make the decisions who are claiming that the government has too much control. So I don't know what to do, what to say, but I agree with you. Something has to be done. And I am glad that you and Professor Boyle and the other members of your group are doing what they can. And Doug, as always, time goes by so fast when you're with us, my friend. But I've got a special word for you, Doug Rocky. Once again, my friend, thank you for everything you've done and the personal sacrifices that you have done in order to protect freedom and democracy. We thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Rob. I mean, Professor Boyle and that whole rest of the study group, you've been in communication with them. Mm-hmm. The world needs to listen to them.
Doug, if there's anything we can do, you know how to get a hold of me. We'll make it happen.
Thank you, Rob. God bless you, Rob.
God bless you, Doug. And my very best to your family. Take care, old friend. Exo Nation, Dr. Doug Rockey. He was number 2 man when it came to, he was number 2 man to General Schwarzkopf in cleaning up the depleted uranium mess that was caused by the use of depleted uranium munitions by the United States. Yeah, that's right, going back to Desert Storm and beyond. God bless them all. I still can't understand why the government would deny these people, these soldiers, these crusaders, the help that they so rightfully deserve. Not only from Gulf War I, Gulf War II, but each and every soldier, every service person, male, female, Marine, Air Force, Navy, Army. God, they protect us. They volunteer to become member of the armed forces. You know, we hear about all the braveness of the Secret Service, that they put their bodies in front of the, in front of the president or the vice president, and so on. Well, these guys do the same, except they just don't do it for the president or members of Congress or the Senate. They do it for us. And it makes me sad, it makes me angry to know that governments, the American government, the Canadian government, the British government, are not taking care of our warriors. And yet you've got people like Donald Trump, who was able to raise $6 million within 24 hours to help the veteran groups. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. And we're going to be coming back on the other side of this news break as we continue from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. For you, those of you who are listening to us in your vehicles and you want to know the latest on the Iowa caucuses, the Democrats, let me see, Secretary Clinton has 51% of the votes and Senator Sanders has 49%. Looking at the Republican statistics, Senator Cruz is leading with 28%. Donald Trump is climbing to 25%. And they just changed the screen on me. I believe Senator Rubio, well, there we go. Senator Rubio is at 22%. Dr. Carson at 10%. Let me see. Rand Paul at 4%. And Senator Bush is way down there at 2%. I don't know what Bush is still doing there. I really don't. More money than brains, I guess. Hey, wait a minute. Wasn't his father a president? No, his brother. Oh, wait a minute. Wasn't his father a president as well? Oh, yeah, that's right. We all remember 9/11, don't we? Mm-hmm. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Now, you can always send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can chat with me on Skype. Our Skype address is xzoneradio. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. You know what I do whenever I see a soldier? I always shake their hand and say thank you. It blows them away that we citizens care. And we do. We don't say it enough. So whether you're a soldier, a Marine, a member of the Air Force, Coast Guard, Air Force, whoever, Canadian Armed Forces, United States Armed Forces, Great Britain, from the Exo Nation to each and every one of you, thank you for your service. And thank you for your sacrifice.